My name is Ted Flanagan, and thank you, Rita and Letitia and Grace. How are you tonight? Looking good over there at your panel, at your desk there. It's a pleasure to be here. I've had a chance to filter around and to meet a few of you and to give you a little bit of a flavor of who we are. But I'm just going to introduce EcoMotion, which is our company. We're an environmental consulting company. We're not here to sell you anything. We're not in the sales business. There's lots of very capable solar companies that are out there, and now they're selling batteries as well as EV chargers and other services. But our job is to help you and to help our clients get really good, cost-effective deals for solar systems, right? So, you know, if you just dialed 1-800-SOLAR and had a solar company come over to your house and get a single bid, you might pay more than you should be. And so we would always recommend getting multiple bids. But what we wanted to do tonight was to talk about some of the fundamentals of solar, some of the things that we think that you need to know as you move towards solar. And then we'll also stick around afterwards to be able to answer some of your more technical questions and some of your more personal questions. Our mission is the cost-effective greening of cities, corporations, and campuses. So we're very deliberate with saying cost-effective because I think everybody wants to save the earth, right? But if it's going to cost us a lot of money, we can't afford it. So what we're in the business of doing is trying to help you find win-win solutions between saving the earth and saving money in your pocketbook. And again, we're here to educate, we're here to answer your questions, we're here to help, we're here to encourage, but we're also here to be very realistic about how solar can make sense for you and your family in your homes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Miller. And Sean is going to be sharing the presentation with my good friend Michael Ware. Thank you.
Just briefly, the agenda for this evening, what we're going to be talking about are solar basics. What that means is the basics of a system. What is a system? The modules, the inverters, the equipment. How do we site a system? So we'll be talking about your rooftop. And how we make determinations on the size of the system that you'll need based on the consumption of kilowatt hours at your home, as well as what the conditions of your roof are, maybe the age, whether you have a lot of trees in your yard that shade your rooftop, that sort of thing. We'll also be touching on energy storage and electric vehicle integration into a system as well. These are no longer, I think, emerging technologies, but certainly for the residential sector, there's still a long way to go for adoption of not only electric vehicles, but also much more emerging is the energy storage piece. We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll also be talking about your payment options. There are more opportunities to purchase a solar system than just a cash purchase. There are other financing mechanisms available, which we'll be touching on as well to sort of give you an idea of the range of different deals that you might be offered if you were to go solar for your home. We'll also be directing you to some resources for finding a contractor. And what you need to look for when you are doing that. And then lastly, we'll be talking about a number of resources that are available on the city's website, which some of these are relatively new resources, and these resources have come recently because the city of Carson in March of this year was awarded gold designation from the SolSmart program. And really, this presentation tonight is brought to you because of SolSmart. Last year, EcoMotion and the South Bay Cities Council of Governments were awarded funds to bring 8 South Bay cities to SolSmart designation. And what SolSmart is it's a national designation program which is funded by the U.S. Department of Energy that recognizes communities that have taken steps to address barriers to local solar. Specifically, those are for addressing soft costs. And so a soft cost is a non-equipment cost of your system. So the solar system, typically the basic components are your modules, your inverters, and then there's a balance of system components that go along with it. Soft costs are the non-equipment related fees. So that might be a permit fee, it might be exorbitant installation costs due to specific challenges that a contractor might find on site. So those are examples of soft costs. But I'm just going to talk a little bit before we get into the solar basics of just what the system is. I just want to go over a few things about solar kind of nation and worldwide. I think probably many of you have seen firsthand just the enormous expansion of solar in recent years. You probably see it on a lot of rooftops, not just homes, but massive commercial installations. This graph is basically an illustration of the law of demand. So as prices decrease, demand increases, right? And so what you see here on the orange graph, this is the cost of a solar panel per watt in 1975. And you can see in 1975 it was over $100. At the end of the graph there, 2015, this is a wholesale price, by the way. It's under $1, it's 61 cents per watt. And it's actually even come down further since this. So you can see that the prices have just decreased dramatically. And so as that price has increased, you see the blue part of the graph here. In 2015, global solar installation, that was annually, they installed more than 64,000 megawatts of capacity. 1,000 megawatts is 1 gigawatt. And to try to put that into perspective for you, your average nuclear power plant is 1 gigawatt. So you think there in 2015 that was basically 64 nuclear power plants going online that were actually installed solar capacity. Cumulatively, the world over, there is more than 400 gigawatts of installed capacity, solar capacity across the globe. So that's the equivalent basically of 400 nuclear power plants. In California, California in the U.S. is far and away the nation's leader in solar deployment. More than 20,000 megawatts of capacity. That's, again, more than 20 nuclear reactors built in California. And we see this trend continue for the foreseeable future. In 2018 alone, the state of California installed 3,300 megawatts of solar. So, but what does all of this mean for your bottom line? I mean, you're here because you're interested in solar on your home, on your rooftop, right? So what that means is an installed cost for solar has basically come down into the range for the average home installation in Southern California between $3 and $5 per watt. So the way that solar is typically priced is on a per watt basis. To put that also in some perspective, that the Solar Energy Industries Association, the SEIA, reports that the cost to install solar has decreased more than 70% in the last decade. And the average, you could probably expect to say you might need between 4,000 and 6,000 watts. So if you were to multiply that $3 by 4,000 watts, which would be the equivalent of a 4 kW system, which may be approximately what you might need for an average home, looking at maybe $12,000. That's just as a basis. But obviously there's a lot of nuance into that. But prices have dramatically decreased. The second thing, what that means is, as prices have decreased, the efficiency of this equipment has significantly increased as well. The average solar module is about 18 square feet, so it's about 3 by 6 feet on a rooftop. And over the years, these modules have been able to pack more watts into a panel than previously, and also we see fewer conversion losses from DC to AC. That's for the inverter. And again, we're going to be talking in more specifics what I mean by this watts per panel and also inverter conversion in just a moment here. But basically, the last thing I wanted to point out too, in 2006, which everyone in this room, if you're a homeowner, would be eligible for. Also, if you're a business owner as well and you were looking to go for solar, the federal investment tax credit, which is currently at 30%, that's a dollar for dollar tax credit, which you actually see a reduction on your income tax when you purchase a solar system. That was actually going to decrease to 26% in 2020. But basically what all of this means is that, now is a better time than ever to go solar just because of, these price decreases, the equipment efficiency, and also the tax credit that's available. But we're going to go through now, I'm going to get to the point of why we're all here tonight, and we're going to talk about solar on your rooftop. But before we do that also, I want to just make sure that we're all on the same page and know what we're talking about when we talk about a solar system. All right, so what is a solar system? Does anybody know out there what I said already, but what are the components of a solar system? Solar panel, what else? Inverter. Does anybody know what an inverter is? DC to AC. That right there, that is. So what is all of this? This is the equipment that makes up a solar system. The module itself, the individual module, is essentially the collector. Each module is made up of cells which produce a DC voltage when they receive the light from the sun. Well, what does that mean? What does DC voltage mean? Well, that's a good question. I might not be the best one to answer that either. But no, they collect the light from the sun and convert it to energy, right? And so multiple modules together, several modules together, actually make up the array. So when I said earlier, the average household is a 4 kW system. What do I mean by that? How many modules is that? Well, you can typically expect a module today to be anywhere between 300 to 350 watts. So remember I said 18 square feet, 6 by 3 the module, anywhere between 300 and 350 watts, right? So you're looking at maybe 12 to 15 panels on your home, give or take a few. Those modules altogether are the array. They are wired, and conduit is run to an inverter, and that inverter converts that DC voltage to AC voltage, which is what you use in your home, right? And so those are the main two components, but there are also a number of other components that make up the balance of system. Those include the racking, so the modules don't just sit on the top of the rooftop, right? They actually have to be attached, and they're attached with the racking. There's a wire, there's the conduit, and then all of this runs back to the inverter, which then runs into your main panel. Typically, between that main panel and an inverter, there would be an AC disconnect. So there are all these other items that make up the balance of system. But those are the fundamentals of the system, which are your modules, your inverters, and your balance of system components. But at this point in time, so we've kind of discussed the very basic components of the system. We're going to get deeper into the terminology, the terminology that we use when we talk about systems, talking about time of use, utility rates, all of that as well. And for that, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Michael. So, Michael? You have a question? Yeah.
Let's go back to that slide. I want to stand for just a minute. Back, there. So wherever you live, your house faces a certain direction. And tell me right now, which way is due south here? That way, due south, okay. So we can predict how modules are going to perform and how much energy they're going to put out based on which way they're facing, what spot on the earth they are, and how they're angled. So one of the things that you'll be considering is, what portion of your roof should you put modules on? And the best direction is south. All the way to west is good. But the very best would be southeast to southwest. You can put modules on a northeast side or a northwest side, and the production will be slightly less, but it still might be worth it to you. So that's one thing that a solar contractor can assess for you. Some people's front of their house faces in the right direction. Some people it's the back of their house. And you look at what's shading the house and so forth. But it's a very individual process. So one thing I invite everyone to do is jump in, have a solar contractor come out, and I bet you somebody has, right? You already had some people come and look at your house. Don't fall in love with the first one. Make them work for it. We tell everybody to get several bids. They all have different deals and different ways of doing business, different methods of financing, so you'll want to talk to several and be able to compare it. But I just wanted to say that, you know, there's a solution for almost every kind of house. If you've got shade issues, like if solar is shade avoid, they don't want a lot of sun on the panels. And it used to be that everything would be tied together. If you shade one panel, you shade the whole series, and it would depress production. But now they have microinverters. There's a slide here where every module has its own inverter that changes the DC current into AC. So as a shadow crosses your array, the rest of the panels keep functioning at a high level, and only that shadow module is depressed. So there's lots of things and lots of solutions that come to bear on your house. So when you're talking about how you buy energy and how we assess the value of solar energy, we look at the basic unit called a kilowatt hour. And kilowatt hour is how you all buy your electricity. And the best example for a kilowatt hour, even though it's getting a little dated now, is the 10 incandescent light bulbs. I hope you've all changed your light bulbs now to LEDs. But so one 100-watt bulb, if you had 10 of those, that would be 1,000 watts, a kilowatt. And if you left those on for 1 hour, that's a kilowatt hour. So that unit of electricity is a kilowatt hour, and it is priced. It has different prices at different times, or it has different utilities price it based on how you purchase it. Small hair dryers are often 1 kilowatt, so if it took you an hour to dry your hair, anybody know? I would say, who has a lot of hair? 1 hour, that would be 1 kilowatt hour, and it probably will only cost you like 20 cents. Pretty good deal, right? Most refrigerators use about 2 to 4 kilowatt hours per day. So again, that's, you know, less than $1 to keep everything not perishing, which is good. And if you think about that as your bill unit, your kilowatt hour, then you kind of look at the next level is, well, how many do you consume in a year? And so does anybody have an idea of how many kilowatt hours they use in 1 year? Do you? Is it 5,432? You know, I was close. I in my house, single-family house, I use 5,475. If you don't know, one easy place to look on your bill is often on the very front of the bill. They'll tell you what your daily average is. You know, they'll say, congratulations, this year you're averaging 15.2 kilowatt hours. Last year you were using 16.8. But if you just take that figure and multiply it by 365, that's your total use. And that's a good figure to know, because now you know what your goal is. If you use 6,000 kilowatt hours a year, how big a system do you need to reduce that? Or you would know whether you could reduce half of it, or what portion. So that's often a good thing to know. How much do you use? So the thing that makes this a great proposition is the policy called net energy metering. And net metering means that you get credit for that kilowatt hour that your solar system produces, whether you consume it immediately. If you consume it immediately, therefore you haven't drawn in a kilowatt hour from the grid. So you've saved that 17 cents or 25 cents or whatever it was at that particular time. If you, let's say you're not home, it's a sunny day, your system is producing more than your house needs. That kilowatt hour goes back into the grid, but you get the same value of credit for it. Without belaboring it, except for a few pennies that you pay, like everybody does, for public goods charges and nuclear decommissioning charges, but essentially you get the retail value of that kilowatt hour. So in essence, it means that the grid, the utility, is your bank. You either use it or store it. You store that value. So that's what makes this process work, and that's what makes solar pay back, and that's why it's a great deal for everybody. When you go solar now, you move to a system called time of use payment. And that means that you pay for that kilowatt hour a value determined by the day part. So you pay one rate in the morning, a different rate in the afternoon, a different rate, all night long. And the utilities value it by the total demand for those kilowatt hours. So here's some examples of some Southern California Edison rates. And we use this as an example. I know some of you are on what they call now the CPA rates. And they're very similar, so it functions well to talk in terms of these amounts. But so if you're on a time of use, then take a summer day from June to September, from 8 to 4 p.m., your electricity is costing you 22 cents per kilowatt hour. And then at 4 p.m. during the week, it jumps to 41 cents. That's the peak period. That's when power is in great demand, and so they charge more for it. And then overnight, it falls back down to 22 cents. So, and it's different for weekdays and weekends. The winter rates are slightly different than the summer dates. But by knowing what you're charged for your power, you can also understand what you'll make, how the solar will be valuable to you. Instead of consuming a kilowatt hour at 41 cents, you'll make one. And if you don't need it, you'll send it back into the grid, and that'll be great. So a lot of people haven't moved to the time of use rate structure yet. Are anybody aware of how they're paying currently on tiers? Right, like right now, with the way that Southern California Edison has been, and I believe that CPA has adopted that for the tiered use, it stacks up. Like you get an allotment. Like you can use the first 300 kilowatt hours, and that's going to cost you 17 cents. And then when you use that many, the next batch of 300, now that's going to cost you 25 cents. And then when you've used that batch, if you need more, then that's going to cost you 32 cents. So it just kind of stacked up like that. And the way solar worked in that situation was last used is the first out. So it would take off your high price power first. Now that's all changing to time of use. So you value solar by the time of use. So solar will pay back. And it doesn't matter whether you're on a green rate or not a green rate. It has a certain value, and if you produce electricity, it will pay you back. So here's just an example, a hypothetical situation where we said, suppose we put a 3 kilowatt system, so that's 3,000 watts. It's, as Sean said, it's probably 10 to 12 modules on a roof. And the standard term for price is the price per watt. So if you say $4 a watt, 4 times 3,000 watts would be a $12,000 purchase. And you get $3,600 as your tax credit. So 30% of your initial purchase will come back to you at your next tax filing. You get that back almost immediately. So the rest of it would pay back depending on how much it saved from your electric bill. So everybody's going to be slightly different. It kind of depends on when you use power and when you don't. But essentially, for the same time of use rates, the value of solar is going to be pretty consistent. It's going to be more valuable in the summer because your rates are higher and your production is higher, and a little less in the winter. But you get to keep track of all of it. You don't waste any of it because it either offsets one or goes into the bank for a credit. So here's an example of where, in this mythical situation, the cash flow it turns positive in year 10. So like nine and a half years into it, you've paid for your solar system. Now this is going to keep working for 25 years. All modules are guaranteed to work for 25 years. And if you just basically keep them clean, and they keep working. The piece of equipment that changes the current from DC to AC, you'll probably need to replace that at least once in the system life, but that won't be a lot of money. Just our kind of rule of thumb is $300 or $400 per kilowatt. So, ultimately this system will need maybe $1,000 in a new inverter. So The other factor is how you value inflation, the cost of the power that you're saving. So if I tell you right now that at the peak you can save 41 cents a kilowatt hour, and every year that goes up at 2% or 3% or 4%, or, we don't really know the future of rate increases. We tend to be conservative and say, what if it only goes up at 2%? In this example, you're still making more money than you paid for the system over 25 years. And if rates go up higher, then you win, because you're now producing power on your roof. So you enjoy that. And now that every one that you use for a credit is 50 cents or 60 cents or wherever. So now you'll be in the position of cheering for rate increases. You think so? Maybe not. This is a time of use model. So does anybody already have solar on their house, and you're just wondering how it fares under the new CPA rates? They're grandfathering some things, but for anybody else who's just starting now, you're going to move to the time of use rate structure with solar.
Is that mandatory?
Yeah, it's mandatory. They will only interconnect you and move you to a time of use rate, but you have your choice. There are different types of rates. So you can pick one that matches your lifestyle. And there are some time of use rates that have an EV component. So like if you know for a fact you're charging a vehicle overnight, you could pick a rate that has a lower overnight rate. So, and the people at SCE will help you determine what's best for you too. So it's first go solar, and then make sure that you're on the best rate. Another solar basic is obviously as the days get longer, you have more solar. So you put a certain amount on your roof, and your January, your December levels of production aren't that great. I mean, they are, but the June, July, and August are twice it. So that's kind of how you can expect it to impact your bill. People who connect in January go, hey, wait a minute. I thought this was going to take everything. It's coming. It's coming. The big production is coming in the summer. Another aspect of it is naturally solar energy only works when the sun is shining. So on a day that starts at 7 a.m. and concludes at 7 p.m., you'll see that your system just rises and produces more and then kind of levels off during the day. Yes, sir.
Good question. How does a battery bank fit into this? Because if it's the whole you can store it in your battery bank if you added that component.
Yeah, we are going to talk about batteries in a little bit, but I mean, from my point of view, batteries are largely about resilience, so that you can have something run a few lights or something. The fact that you're grid connected and you're getting credit for what you don't use at the time. I don't think that batteries are that much of an economic advantage. They are more advantage for business rates because they work differently, but on commercial rates, I think the people who want solar will talk about it. I want batteries. I think the more valuable component is the fact that you can keep some lights on if you have a battery. And this is your same solar profile when it's a alternately sunny, cloudy day. It'll go up and down, so it won't always be consistent. So we always say that you should reduce your use as much as possible before you look at solar, because that's your best investment, the kilowatt hour that you didn't have to use. So, we encourage you we'll look at all your energy efficiency needs, but particularly the ones that relate to electricity, because that's what solar generates. So when you're shopping for a new appliance, you look at the Energy Star appliances that use less per day. A lot of people will get a new refrigerator, and then they put the old refrigerator in the garage to keep one can of beer cold. So that's going to keep wasting energy. Space heaters are notorious uses of a lot of electricity. So, one thing would be able to is you should try to reduce your load as much as possible. If you've cut your use from 6,000 kilowatt hours a year to 5,000 kilowatt hours, then you need that much less solar. So it's great. The other opportunity beyond reducing would be shifting. Now, if you're on a time of use rate, or you expect to be on a time of use rate, then it makes sense to program your appliances. So if you know that the price of energy until 9 o'clock on a weekday is 41 cents, and then you know at 9:01 it's 22 cents, program that dishwasher to go on at 9:02. So there's a lot you can shift to beyond just saving. So when we estimate the size of a solar system, again, we start with how many are you going to, how many do you use right now? And I guess the better way to look at that is what's the, if I saved 10% or whatever, what would the maximum be? Let's say that your goal is to offset 6,000 kilowatt hours. Just kind of a rule of thumb, because every system is different, is we say a kilowatt produces about 1,500 kW. It varies every year depending on weather, how many cloudy days, how many rainy days. It depends on how often a shadow drifted across your panels. It depends on how clean you kept them. It depends on if they're 15-degree tilt or 20-degree tilt. If they're facing due south or southwest, they're all slightly different. But this is a general rule of thumb. So you'd say, if I wanted to eradicate my entire load, I would take a 4 kilowatt system. I've divided 6,000 by 1,500, and I come up with 4 kilowatts. So then I know what size I'm targeting. So solar, basically for residential, it goes on rooftops. People, you can, if you have a giant backyard, you can literally just mount it on the ground. You just kind of angle it toward the sky, and that works. If you've got a couple of acres that you don't know what to do with, I encourage you to put solar there. You can build trellises. You can cover, balconies or things with solar. But typically for the residential use, it's roof mounted. Like this is a system comprised of sheer black panels. They're called SunPower. They don't have the typical diamond pattern that you often see in modules. It's a real sleek look, so that's what this particular homeowner wanted. And they've got a pretty big system, but they also had a pretty big house, so they're offsetting a lot. This, again, is where you need the help of your solar contractor. Which roofs are best, depending on what they face. Another factor is you may have an opinion about where you want the solar, but again, you got to select the roofs that are most productive. If you have shade, then you probably want to use microinverters, or maybe you avoid one section of the roof because it's right next to a huge tree. You have to work around the nature of your roof. Does it have a lot of hips and valleys? As Sean said, that these are 18 to 20 square feet, so there are some places where they don't fit well. Often, roofs are interrupted by chimneys, by pipes, by vents, so you work around those things. So that's another great reason to have a contractor come out and give you an assessment for your particular roof and how it works. The age of the roof is a consideration, because you're investing in a system that you want to last for 25 years. You don't want to go 5 years into it and then find out, I got to take that off, re-roof, and then put it back on. And if you're close to a roof aging out, you might just want to go ahead and replace it all at the same time, or at least that portion of the roof that's going to have the solar system on it. Maybe you'll do, that section now and do new roof later, but that'll avoid you extra cost in the future. And also, solar contractors will have an opinion about the load-bearing capability of your roof. Solar modules tend to be about 2 to 3 pounds per square foot, and most roofs can handle that just fine. They do penetrate your roof and anchor that into joists, and then they seal that up really well to the point where that little penetration is the most least likely place to leak. So in all my years of being in the solar business, I've heard of very, very, very few leaks. And I think that those were just a few bad apples who didn't conscientiously seal up their leaks. But it's hardly ever an issue. But again, a contractor will decide what's best for your roof. If you have a tile roof, there's special equipment that can hook to the tiles. If you have a delicate clay tile roof and maybe you don't want somebody walking on all that stuff, one approach is solar contractor will scoop up that area of tiles, put down comp roll, put the solar system on it, and then edge it, put the tiles back around so it looks like it's just nested in, and it's a real great look. So I invite you to explore the different options, what's unique about your roof and what will work for you. Okay, so if you have a roof in California, you have valuable real estate. And now to talk about some of the different payment options. If you have the cash, like you were just on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and now you have the cash, or you have really good friends who just give you money. Just paying up front is almost always the best way. You have a good return on investment, and it'll definitely pay itself back. There are other methods. A lot of people turn to home equity. It kind of vanished in 2008 when the whole thing went south, but it's back. Everybody don't you all go on Zillow like I do and say, oh, look what I'm worth today. So you can tie into your home equity, but it's kind of like a car. I mean, there are different ways to do it. You can buy it, you can lease it, and there are a number of companies that are advertising no money down. You can have solar today. And there are some great things about that deal. When a company says, we'll own it and we'll lease it to you, it's on your roof for 20 years or 25 years, whatever period of time you sign up for. So if I figured I buy a system and on average the system, let's just say hypothetically, saves me an average of 20 cents per kilowatt hour that I generate. So that's all money in the bank for me. But let's say I don't want to put the $10,000 up front or 15 or whatever it's going to be. I can go to the solar company, solar leasing company, and they'll say, okay, we'll put solar on your roof, we'll own it, we'll maintain it for 20 years. If anything breaks, we'll fix it. We'll watch your inverter for you. We'll change it when it needs to be changed. But we're going to charge you 15 cents for that power. So out of the deal, you net 5 cents and they make 15 cents. And they may even add an escalator to it. Say, I'll start you at 15 cents and I'll increase it 2% every year or whatever. So those deals also have to be compared. Obviously, you want the price that gives you a margin and that doesn't escalate rapidly. If you're paying an average of 20 cents for your power, you don't want to sign a deal for 20 cents that goes up 5% every year. Then pretty soon you'll be upside down. But there are lots of companies in the space, and again, we invite you to get a cross-section of bids. PACE you may have heard of. It stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. And it's a method by which if you're doing home energy improvements, you can borrow that money and then pay it back through your property tax bill. So the deal with that is that it does place a lien on your house. So we think that it shouldn't be that big of a problem because solar on a house makes it more valuable, so it should be more appealing if you ever go to sell it. So, but often the solar contractors will have other methods because sometimes the big solar companies, like SunPower is a big solar company, and they work through dealers, through the solar contractor that would come to your house, and sometimes they sponsor finance deals. So that's another way that solar contractors compete. One might have a 6% deal, one might have a 4% deal. So better to have more come out and you get a better gamut. All the solar contractors represent different types of products. There are lots of different module manufacturers. There's lots of different inverter manufacturers. And so, contractor A may have a really sweet deal based on the products that he carries or she sells, but contractor C might have a great financing deal. So it's great to talk to a number of people. Yes.
When you say cash buy the system outright, what are we talking about when you're paying for the whole system?
Well, like in that example I gave was a $12,000 payment. So you'd hand over $12,000 to the contractor, and then you would make your money back as your bill reduced. And your system's going to last for 25 years. After 10 years, it's paid for, and now it's all gravy. You're just you're rolling in dough. You have parties in the neighborhood because you have solar.
So they wouldn't tag something else on top of that first 12,000?
No. No. But you know, always it's the devil is in the details. I can tell you there are a lot of salespeople who want to close on the first visit, and you don't want that. You want to check the market out and get some different pricing. You want to be sure that you're comparing apples to apples. Some people might quote their system size in AC terms. Somebody else might quote it in DC terms, and they're slightly different. So one might sound better, but then you know, you would say, wait a minute, you're not comparing them on the same basis.
All the ones I hear over the radio, the ads, they all talk about a lease, so it's like they don't want you to buy it.
Well, you know what, the whole lease deal is I won't say it's a complete invention of Wall Street, but that's where the money comes from. And there are huge companies that have millions and millions of dollars, and that's what they want to do. It's essentially like if you financed your system at 10 or 12%. That's what they want for their money. They want like a 12% rate of return. So it's better for you to buy a system and pay, you know, even 6% or 8% interest. That's better than these deals. The other advantage to that PACE loan was it usually doesn't depend on your credit score. So if you've had some unfortunate events in your financial history, but you still want solar and you have a house, then the PACE deal might be good for you because they don't look at your credit rating. They just look at the fact that you own the house and there's some equity in it. So, you know, these different things have opportunity for different people and different needs. So you gotta check them out. I better run through. Are you coming back?
In a couple slides.
Okay. All right. Again, we invite you to look for a number of qualified contractors. It's easier and easier these days, you know, between Yelp and between Home Advisor and you know, myneighborhood.com. There's lots of places that will tell you good reviews and good experiences with solar contractors. The South Bay COG will link to some lists. We have one on the Solar Santa Monica website, which they link to, and you can find a list of contractors for this area. You can also use these platforms. You know, you've all heard of like Lending Tree, where you say, I want to refinance my house, and then, you know, you'll get 5 bids out of the air. Yeah, I know. So there are platforms, but these are guided by consultants who look at your house on satellite view, and you say what you want. They help you figure it out, and then they throw it out to bid for like 5 different area contractors, and they come back and they say, hey, here's the deal. You know, this guy's going to charge you $3.25 a watt, and this one's going to charge you $3, and he'll throw in monitoring. That's just another way to do it, you know, if you're comfortable with that way. But usually the best is to have someone come out on your house and get a feel for it. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Who is the supervising department of the city with regards to these projects?
That's a good question for Rita.
Do you want to repeat the question?
Oh, sure. You were asking who was supervising, do you mean the permitting process?
When you are installing, putting out.
Yeah, there are 2 entities. One would,
It's your place, find out whether they are doing it the right way or whatever.
I'm going to turn it, you want to know who's supervising the contractors?
No,
Okay.
who is the supervisor
Okay.
on the city?
Okay, yeah, so who's permitting and inspecting?
Your place.
Who's permitting and inspecting, Rita?
It's the building and safety department. So the contractor will pull a permit through building and safety, and then it'll be a 1-day turnaround. With less than 3 days, they'll get a permit, and then the city inspector, building inspector will go and check your house to make sure that the contractor did it correctly.
How does that
The question was, how do we know that we pulled the permit? You can call the city to check. You can ask the contractor to give you a copy of the permit. And then you can also call our building and safety department to confirm and verify that this permit was pulled.
How much is it?
Those costs are usually paid for by the contractor and as part of your overall price. Yeah. Yeah, you know, when somebody installs solar, they have to satisfy two entities. They have to satisfy the city that they've done it properly, that they have the right licenses, in fact, and then they have to satisfy the utility, that they've interconnected this properly. And what we haven't talked about, because there are details, is there are certain disconnect switches that are required. They have to label the conduit. The conduit is what encases the wires that run from your panels to your inverter to your meter. So there are a lot of different requirements that both the utility have and the city would have that the contractors have to meet. So it's all in all a pretty well supervised process, I would say. Yes, sir.
I have one caveat that I think that everybody should pay attention to. You may have heard about it. I took a class at Harvard College last summer to learn about installations and all this stuff. It kind of, it's like I'm out here saying everything that I learned. But the caveat is, and I took a sales class a couple of weeks ago, is that if you do the PACE program, which is an umbrella, they have different, up under the PACE program, different ways you can finance it. Be careful because you won't get a tax bill. And the tax bill will be used. The city pay $5,000 a year, then your tax bill will be whatever, say your payment was $200 a month on average, they will add that to the back of the tax bill, and that's how some people lose their home.
I was just gonna ask, will that cause your property taxes to go up if you add the solar panels without the lease?
But that's the question for.
No, in the state of California, they're tax exempt, so they add value to your home, but they don't add any property tax extra value.
So your tax bill is $5,000 a year, and right now you sign up this month, and it's like about $200 a month. The next November, it's going to be 200 times 12, which is 2,100 plus the 5,000. So you're going to be a big deal. And so, but when you sign up, they should tell you all that stuff that you know what to expect. So start putting money away when it comes down to it.
But you should already know that if you're going to be paying $200 towards that.
But people don't. That's probably.
Well, you know, yeah. Well, I will say this about the PACE program, because it's not just for solar, and some people need to do a lot of things for the house that they can't afford. You could insulate, you could retrofit, earthquake retrofit, you could replace an HVAC system, you could repair your plumbing. If it all contributes to energy efficiency or generation, then you can use it. But yeah, you should be forewarned that, yeah, instead of the money coming out of your bank account, or instead of making a payment, it's on your property tax bill. So you got to be aware of that and know that you understand the accounting and how that works and for how long and at what interest rate. Hey, Sean, they miss you. Don't you miss Sean? Get back up here, Sean.
Okay, but I don't know if it's quite my turn yet. But yeah, well, thank you, Michael. Maybe don't leave me quite yet.
I will stand by you.
Because I want to go back to this slide here. This presentation, I believe, will be available on the city website after this. I see a number of you taking photos. And these are also links that hopefully will be live when that gets uploaded. But if not, I just want to direct you to Grace over here. She has one of these pamphlets. Those of you that are looking for contractors, if you go to the southbaycities.org website, they have a Renewable South Bay webpage, and they link to, I think, almost 40 or 50 different local contractors. So you can use that to start on your search.
I'm trying to find that on our page. I'm on that page right now.
Yeah, and I'm happy to pull that up after this presentation as well. But you wanted me to take it from here?
Well, was I going to talk about more of this stuff?
I'm happy to move on.
So
yeah,
keep talking.
Yeah,
By hand signals, I will tell you whether or not he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, so this is just a brief list of what you can expect as far as warranties go for the equipment. So we've talked about the system. You can expect a contractor to offer you about a 1-year workmanship guarantee. So, for instance, if that roof does happen to leak within the first year, though Michael over here is guaranteeing that it won't, In case it were within the next year, typically the contractor would be responsible and come out and take care of that for you. Or, for instance, any sort of electrical work that was done, say on a wire or conduit run that had an issue, again, the contractor would come out and take care of it. As Michael mentioned, also the modules themselves have a 25-year warranty. That typically just includes the equipment. But again, that's something you can usually contact your contractor and they should hopefully take care of the warranty claim. As Michael also said, the inverter has a 10-year warranty. Batteries also typically have a 10-year warranty. But just beware that maintenance is typically not included. And yes, even though when you see a solar system driving down the road and it looks like there are no moving parts, it still does need to be maintained. The modules need to be cleaned on a regular basis, typically at least once a year, if not more than that. Again, the inverters need to be checked to make sure that they're operating correctly. You also just need to make sure that all of the connections are tight, water is not getting into the system and that sort of thing. So it is important to understand that typically maintenance is not included, though a contractor will offer a maintenance package if you would like. These systems also typically come with a monitoring program as well. This is an example of one monitoring program called Sunny Portal. It's offered by SMA, and these monitoring programs, you can usually look it up if you've got an iPhone or a smartphone. You can download an app, and you can look at what your system is doing in real time. You can usually also go visit the website and take a look at the portal. That is pretty much offered across the board now. So you have access to your system. You can see what it's doing. If it's doing something it shouldn't be, for instance, not performing, you can get on the phone with your contractor and get that taken care of quickly. But moving on, we also mentioned we were going to talk about energy storage and EV infrastructure. Does anybody out there have an electric vehicle? Oh, great. So we have, and are you, you don't have solar though, right? So you're just using, okay. Well, that's great. And do you have a level 1 or a level 2 charger? A level 1? Okay, so we'll get into that a little bit more, what those particulars mean in just a second, but we're gonna just start out with the energy storage. I'm guessing a lot of people in this room have probably heard of the Tesla Powerwall as kind of the common, probably the most well-known home battery storage system. We're talking about solar capacity in kW and saying that an average system is about 3 to 4 kW. This battery system for a Tesla Powerwall, to put that in perspective, is usually a 5 kW system that has a capacity or ability to discharge about 13.5 kilowatt hours in a full charge. And so Michael was saying earlier, maybe, whoops, no signal. I keep bumping into this.
Oh, did you unplug it?
No, I keep bumping. Okay. So, that at a full charge, if you were to, say, lose electricity at your house, you could get about a full day's worth of your complete household energy usage from one of these Tesla Powerwalls. But there are also a number, again, just like solar, a number of battery manufacturers out there. We just have 3 here, which is a Sonnen battery and also an LG battery in addition to the Tesla Powerwall. And those will typically cost anywhere between $5,000 and $7,000 per battery, plus $1,000 to $3,000 for installation, plus your taxes and fees. So when you think about installing battery storage with your solar system, you're looking at potentially doubling the cost of that system. And so you have some decisions to make about whether or not that resiliency is worth it to you. But happy to talk about that further after the presentation or if you have other questions. But this is just a couple of examples of, well, what does that look like? This top picture here is actually the Tesla Powerwall system installed. You can see the white unit at the bottom, that's the battery. So that's the kind of size that you're looking at. With everything installed, you've got, on the left-hand side is the solar inverter, and then you have, to the right of that is an electrical box with all of your essential loads. And that's essentially what is tied into the battery. So you can make determinations about which lights, which circuits in your house that you want to actually have backed up. On the bottom picture is a photo of a Sonnen system, and you actually see on the far right-hand side that actually also has tied in the electric vehicle charger, which is, I asked a question earlier about a level 1 or a level 2. That's actually a level 2 charger. So a level 1 charger can typically fully charge your car anywhere between 7 to 10 hours. Is that right?
I think Ted was saying all night long.
Higher. Okay,
Like
18
12,
hours.
13 to 16
Okay.
hours.
1 hour gives you 5 miles of range.
5 miles. Okay, so the level 2 is actually the 7 to 10 hours in. So a level 1 charger will typically take, as he's saying, 1 hour per 5 miles of range. An average electric vehicle has maybe anywhere between 230 to 300 miles of range. So it's a lot of hours, but a level 2 charger, which is more expensive, but can charge your vehicle a lot faster, typically overnight for a full charge.
Before you leave that slide, I just wanted to say that typically solar equipment like the inverters and the disconnects, that's all mounted on the outside of your house, or it can be. I think both these batteries are required to be indoors. The Sonnen I know is required to be indoors, so you need to put it inside a garage, or you can put it in your living room if you want, but it's just harder to wire. So that's another distinction. I was saying resilience is a great deal for batteries if you wired. Like you want to have a critical device that you need to keep running, like your kidney dialysis machine. Here's a good investment. Get a battery so that doesn't stop running. But then you'll want to specifically wire that so that that happens automatically.
So we got 5 minutes.
Okay.
What about the power outage though? How does that, we shut down completely the power outage?
Yeah, when the grid goes down, your inverter goes down, and when your inverter goes down, your system goes down. So when you add a battery system, they can reconfigure it so they call it an automatic transfer switch. That flips and now allows your solar and your battery to work to serve your house, but it doesn't travel to the grid, so no one else is in jeopardy. That's the main reason they don't want to do. They don't want power floating through. So you have to island your house, and that's a little bit extra money to do all that.
So just quickly, there are a couple of incentives that are available. So unfortunately in California, for the most part, there are no longer incentives available for solar. However, if you are installing solar with storage, there is the California Self-Generation Incentive Program, the SGIP, currently at 35 cents per watt hour of installed battery capacity. So again, this is available only for those of you, if you're installing solar, also installing battery storage as well. And then also as far as electric vehicles go, there are fewer and fewer incentives available all the time, but one that is available is the SCE Clean Fuel Reward Program. That's worth $1,000 per vehicle that is bought or leased after January 1st of this year. So if you actually bought or leased your vehicle before January 1st of this year, you're still eligible for a $450 rebate. And CPA customers are eligible for these SCE rebates. Most of you in this room have probably now enrolled in the Clean Power Alliance Clean Power Rate. That's a 50% clean power being delivered to your home now. So to compare that to the old SCE rate, it was only about 30%, but now you're receiving 50% of your energy is made from renewable sources. And you can actually also opt up to a 100% level if you wish, as well as opt down to a 36% level as you wish. But also, as a CPA customer, we also just want to note that a CPA customer that installs solar actually sees a net surplus compensation rate for solar that is 10% higher than SCE. So that's just one of the benefits of...
Why? What's a net surplus compensation rate?
Well, we can talk about that later, but basically what that is the net surplus compensation rate is that if your system is generating more solar over the 12-month period than you actually used in kilowatt hours, consumed in kilowatt hours in your home, you would actually be paid at a net compensation rate that is 10% higher than SCE. But I quickly just want to go over a few of the updated web resources that are available to you. So at the very beginning of this presentation, I mentioned that a lot of this presentation was brought to you by SolSmart through funding that was provided by the US DOE and the Solar Foundation. Well, as a part of that program, for Carson earning a gold designation, they have now put a number of resources on the city's website. You can see on the right here, there's a solar photovoltaic information page that's available, and it provides a number of different resources. One that might be interesting to you is the LA County Solar Map. So you can go to the City of Carson website, you click on the solar photovoltaic information, and click on the LA Solar Map link. You can see this is an overhead shot of actually the South Bay City's Council of Governments building, an overhead shot, and you can see on top of the rooftop there are a bunch of red and orange and blue and green dots. So if you're interested to know what does my rooftop look like, I've heard all this information tonight, I have no idea if my rooftop's any good for solar. One really simple check, you can go to the LA County Solar Map, you can type in your address, and this map will populate over your home, and it will give you all of these colored dots on top of your roof. Well, what do these colored dots mean? Well, you think about the color of the sun, orange, red, the warmer colors, those are indicators that your rooftop is potentially a good candidate for solar. Blue, green, less attractive for solar. So if you put in your address into this map and it populates and you see just a big swath of red and orange, that's a pretty good indicator that you're probably in good shape for solar. Now, of course, this is just a very base level step, but it's just one resource that is available to you if you so wish. In addition to that, all of the information that you need in order to go solar, earlier there was a question about, well, who do I go to if I need a solar permit, or who at the city is taking care of that? The Building and Safety Department, and the Building and Safety Department has through the LA County website, Building and Safety website, a number of documents that pertain to the requirements for submitting a permit for solar. Again, this is something that the contractor is going to take care of for you. If you hire a contractor, you decide you like one deal the best, the contractor is going to take care of the permitting process for you. You don't have to worry about it. But if you're interested to know what those requirements are, you can go to this document on the Carson City website and find out what's required. And again, the City of Carson has an expedited permitting process for residential solar 10 kW or less, which they will issue a permit in less than 3 business days, and typically on the same day over the counter. So it's very efficient and very fast. Here's just a close-up of that. And then some additional resources, financing and consumer resources. There's a link to the LA County PACE financing program. There's also a number of other consumer resources. For instance, there's a Clean Energy Consumer Bill of Rights. So if you're interested to know, what are my rights when I hire a solar contractor, or what are my rights within the state of California? California is, has anyone in here heard of the Solar Rights Act? Kenesha has. That goes back to 1978. Basically, that act established your right to collect solar energy at your home. So in the state of California, you have a right to collect the solar energy that reaches your house. And it also, that act limits the ability of homeowners associations and local governments to place restrictions on that right. So, again, this has been around for 41 years at this point in time. Those types of resources to provide more information to you are available on the city's website. And then also some additional local resources. Here's the number for the Building and Safety Department. You also have Rita's phone and email, as well as Aaron Baum's information at the South Bay COG, who's not here tonight. You can reach him. And then also be sure to pick up one of these as well for any additional information. So with that, we're going to open up the floor for questions, but I have a question for all of you. Who's ready to go solar? A few people. Okay. Great. Well, thanks all of you for being here tonight. I was going to get to that. I was just going to say thanks everyone first. But yes, now we're going to take some questions, and please.
Is that
hold on.
Go ahead.
Hold on. So the question is, I'm just going to repeat the question for the recording as well. The question is, are there any consumer reports available online that give information about the reputability of manufacturers, or cost effectiveness or efficiency, that sort of thing? And yes, there are. But were you going to answer?
Well, literally consumer reports.
Yes.
One of these platforms called Energy Sage, it's online, and both Energy Sage and Pick My Solar have a lot of anecdotal information about different products, about their reliability, about what consumers thought of them. So yeah, there are different guides to it. Plus, there's what was Russell's favorite magazine? Home Solar or Home Energy? Home Energy, yeah. There are publications out there that also will publish, most popular solar panels or best solar panels.
Those are anecdotal information. I'm talking about somebody who's actually tested these things.
Yeah.
Well, there at high levels there are bodies that rate them, and that usually yeah, we go to there's a publication called DNVGL, and they rate like the top tier module. So we often go to that source, but Energy Sage will often quote those authorities that say, here's why, or they'll say, this panel loses only 0.5% of energy a year. This panel uses a full percent of energy a year. So, yeah, there's a lot of information out there about the best panels.
Yes.
If you have a two-story house with a detached garage, and you don't want the system on your second, on the roof of the house itself, can you still set it up in the garage?
So the question is, if you have a two-story house with a detached garage and you don't want the system installed on your second story, can you put it on the detached garage? So.
Yes, you can. You'll need to run conduit from the location of the solar to your meter. So that may be a little journey, and they can trench that underground, but the contractor will give you a price on that, and it's not a problem.
Yes.
What's involved in cleaning the modules? Is it something that the homeowner can do himself, and you professionally done?
So what's involved with the cleaning of solar modules? Is that something that can be done by the homeowner, or does that require a specialized technician? Yeah, the answer is water and a soft bristle brush, and that's absolutely something that you could do yourself. You would want to double check that with the contractor if they were offering a maintenance package that you had accepted. But generally speaking, if you were purchasing the system outright, you could maintain that system to the best of your ability, and that includes washing. Yeah.
Yeah, often the rain enough it will take care of it, and if you could rinse it off, and then but sometimes, like when we have local fires and then you get all that debris on your roof, you do want to hose it. And the great thing about a monitoring system is you can tell if it's not producing as much as it should. So maybe it'll signal you, a time to go rinse off the modules again.
Yeah.
In that respect, we live close to a refinery. Everything gets, blackened from the.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you may need to wash maybe twice a year instead of once a year.
Yeah.
But the modules, even with a little bit of film on it, keep producing power, so it has to be pretty dirty for it to just stop. So.
They have to be washed once a week, practically.
And also, just one note on that as well is that really the best time to do this, you don't, if you are going to go up, you install solar and you're going to go up on your roof and wash your panels, be sure to do it first thing in the morning. Don't do it in the middle of the day when the system is producing at its peak. Other questions? Yeah.
Earlier when you were showing the batteries, you have mentioned that if you are, your system can be just the inverter without the battery or with the battery. And if you have the battery, if the electrical company will have a power disruption, you will still have your own power. You will not have any power outage.
And Brett,
So-
you're a good question repeater.
Okay, so the question is, I think, let me see, that you can install a solar system either with a battery or without a battery. However, if you install with a battery, then you can power your home in the event of a power outage, a larger grid outage. Is that the question? Yes, so the answer is yes.
Yeah,
So, but it's-
and it depends on how you configure it and what it runs. Like Sean said, you know, if you have a battery that can put out 13.5 kilowatt hours, maybe that gets you through one day. Maybe if you're only connecting it to critical things like lighting and your computer and your cell phone, maybe it can last 3 or 4 days. So, you know, and if you go all the way and have it, this automatic transfer switch put in so that you can generate when the grid is down, then your system will keep feeding the battery, and you can go further.
So, the generation of the power, it will go first to the grid and give some also to your battery?
Yeah, you typically would set it to absorb power. I know that on the bigger system, all this is programmed in. Like you would say, I always want my batteries to absorb power overnight when it's cheap, or I want my battery to absorb power early in the morning when electricity is cheap, and you would avoid the peak periods of the day when you want that solar energy saving you 41 cents, not going into your battery. You know, when it's only saving you 11 cents, that's when you put it in the battery. So yeah, the installer would have a way for this to be programmed and for you to understand it.
And when you get some quotations or bids, and you want that system, they will give you the cost or...
Yeah, they should, and you'll line up a number of them, because you're not going to fall for the first one, and then you'll compare them, and you tell them what you want. You know, I need a battery of this size to run, you know, my art studio or whatever it is you need it to run.
Yeah.
What about folks that live in mobile homes? Can they install solar panels on their home?
So the question is, what about those that live in mobile homes? Can they install solar panels? And the answer is yes. Again, you'll run into questions. You want to, well, do they own that mobile home? Are they renting it? But generally speaking, if you own a mobile home, yes, you can install solar, and there shouldn't be any issues.
Yeah, there's a mobile home park in Santa Monica, and every trailer or home has solar on it. And you can decide if you want it on your roof, or maybe you want to make a little trellis or something, but yeah, you can.
Yes?
How does solar affect your Southern California Edison bill?
So how does solar affect your Southern California Edison bill? Well, I think if you're in the city of Carson, you should now be receiving a Clean Power Alliance bill. First off, so unless you opted out and decided to stick with SoCal Edison, and that went into effect in June?
They're still getting bills from Edison.
Oh, they're still getting bills from Edison. Okay, never mind. That is still coming then. But I'll let you go ahead.
The way it impacts your bill is that when you generate solar power, and we talked about that unit of a kilowatt hour having a value. So if it's between the hours of 4 p.m. and 9 p.m., that value will be 41 cents. If you generate it, let's say at 5:30, you either use it right away and it saves you 41 cents, or you didn't need it. Your home is already, you know, being served. And then that extra kilowatt hour goes into the grid. SCE keeps track of it and has a credit. And whether you're on Clean Power or not, Clean Power Authority or not, Edison is the one who tracks all this net energy metering and make sure that you get the proper credits on your bill. That's Edison's job.
There's a question back there?
Did you say we use the Clean Power CPA, we're going to pay less money?
So the question is, when you switch to CPA, will you be paying less money for electricity? It would depend on, it would depend on which
Rita is
rate.
the expert.
So the CPA, what's that? The parity? Okay. So Rita is saying you'll pay at parity, and you'll actually be receiving, I believe, more renewable energy through that system. But Rita will talk to you further about that after this. Who's
And
better
whether
able to
you're
speak to it.
strictly on Edison or even if you are on the 100% green option with CPA, the Clean Power Authority or Alliance, the value of solar is still works the same. Your energy is either used or exported for a credit, so that works the same.
Yes.
Last question. You have those battery storage, you can actually grow up the batteries, so the solar generally will be maybe going to the battery, go up more, which people you want to go to the battery, which people you want to go into the house to use.
So the question is, if you install solar and battery storage, can you program the system to send solar generation to the batteries or into the home? And it sounds like the question is also some sort of mix between making a determination, say, half of it to the batteries and half of it to your house.
And the answer is yes. And if you, for instance, said, when the value of energy is high, then I want to use that in my house or get a credit for it. When the value of energy is low, then I'd rather be filling my battery. The thing is, if you had a house and you decided, at 4 o'clock my energy becomes more expensive, so I've stored up some energy from earlier in the day and now I'm going to use it in the house so I don't have to buy that expensive power. So yes, I'm not saying it's really easy, but you could learn to do it and you could program your system that way. You certainly could.
Take more questions you want to.
And we're available afterwards,
Let's see.
so you approach us individually and ask questions.
So we're about at time right now. It's about 7:30. Everyone's going to kind of stick around so you guys can come up and ask us questions. But for the folks that did come out today, I want to thank you. I'm sure you guys want to thank them too for being out here. So
thank you all so much.
Thank you.
So thank you again.
Have no fear. Get that solar contractor out there. Get a price.